Today, we're going to be talking about men's mental health and awareness. Building a business is probably one of the most stressful things that you'll do, and mental health is probably just as important a component as anything else in your business. So today, we're going to have an open panel discussion and just talk about what people have done to deal with it and how they worked through it and some of the challenges they faced. I'm Dennis.
And I'm Greg.
And this is the More Profit, Less Stress podcast,
where we provide the tools for more profit and less stress in your business now so you can turn into a valuable asset later. David, you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me on. My name is David Hisel. For the last 11 years, I've been the vice president and branch manager for Banner Bank in Bandon, Oregon. And most recently, about a month ago, I took over a second branch in North Bend, Oregon. It's about a 45-minute drive in between my two branches. And then in 2023, I took the plunge. I bought a business from a gentleman who was looking to retire. I went into debt about $2 million to buy this business. I basically staked my whole life, put everything out there, and I'm 45. I'm getting to the point where it's like if this business doesn't work out, I'm pretty much toast. So, we're talking about mental health today. I think I can relate to stress levels and mental health, just with those experiences, but also a lot of my previous experiences in life.
Nice. Thank you. Let's go around and introduce everybody real quick. Richard, yourself.
Yes, hi. I'm Richard Klassen. I'm from Canada, Ontario. I'm not sure how far back I should go. I started a business about a year and a half ago with Dennis from Forzani group here. Started my own manufacturing shop, building implements, tree spades, moving trees, grapples, add-on grapples and that kind of thing. Just, my own little welding shop. Now I'm wondering sometimes, okay, where's the next bill payment? Where's that money going to come from? I tend to overthink the whole thing, and then it's like, okay, just relax. Let's just make it. I've made it so far. But yeah, same age as David. I'm 45, and it's like, well, how long is this going to take to get off the ground? And, and so I tend to sometimes go around the block, right? Kick myself. It's like, okay, what kind of a provider am I? Hardly,
Thanks, Richard. Joe.
I was a school teacher, taught school for about 7 years. And I eventually didn't like teaching, so I got into the oil business. I was a landman for 5 years at a Canadian company here. And then my brother, John, who actually followed me to Utah State, my brother Tom followed me to Utah State. So we had 3 Canadians, brothers, that all went to Utah State. We had, I think we had 12 years of Forzani on the team. When I finished the oil business, my brother John had expanded, we opened up one store here in Calgary called Forzani's Locker Room, which was a athletic footwear store, much like the Foot Locker in shopping centers. And we thought we'd use our name because we all played for the Stampeders as well, the Canadian Football League team here. And we thought we'd use our name and it would help us promote our business and all that. To make a long story short, that went really well. I ended up, right at the end of my football career, taking a job teaching in Europe. I taught for 3 years at a military base there. And while I was doing that, my brother John expanded the company, the sporting goods company, to 4 stores. And when I got back, there were 4 operating Forzani's Locker Room stores. And I wanted to get in, but there wasn't room right away. And so even though I was a shareholder in the company. So a couple of years later, I got into the sporting goods business and under a different concept. And from then on, it was a roller coaster ride. We ended up, I think we sold the company in mid-90s.
Around 2010, right? I think.
No, yeah, sorry. We went public in 96. And we sold the company in 2000. And we had 100 stores and it went for quite a lot of money. My brother John was the president and CEO, and I was in management all the way along. But we had our hardships and we had got ups and downs. We chose to get into business. I mean, we could all be like school teachers or postmen or, worked in restaurants, low pressure jobs, but somehow, if you're a businessman, you chose to do that somehow in some way. And so now that you're in it, you got to make the best of it, right? And so that was my career, and I stayed in there right till the end, and I'm now fully retired. I think I was in for almost 28 years of retail. I mean, I can't believe I don't have 72 ulcers and headaches and everything else. There were, you talk about mental health. There were, there were nights at 3 o'clock in the morning. I woke up with a cold sweat, wondering what the hell's going on here. And there's nothing else to do but go put your clothes on and have a coffee and go back to work. And hope that day is going to be better than the day before. Anyway, so that's my background.
The other day when we were talking about doing this podcast, you had sort of related that story you just said to like when you played pro football, that stress of, hey, if it wasn't working out, you'd go out and like, what was your solution? If you got that stress, it's not working out, like you just said, you have a wake up in the cold sweats in the middle of the night. You were talking about you go out and train and learn better and figure it out. And can you expand on that?
I think when things are really tough, you got two options. You can quit,
Yeah.
and that's the easy way, but that's the harmful way actually, or you can dig in but something has to change. I think we all evolve every day. It's not just a one day thing. And when I was playing ball, I was a linebacker, and I was back in the film days. Today it's all computers, and I'm sure anybody can look up anything at any time. But back then, when I played in the 70s, everything was on film, and so I would literally take the projector and the film home, and I would spend. Well, I mean, during the week, the coaches got us prepared to play the opposition. We would go through the opposition's backfield and their play calling and all that. So we did that. But I felt that I needed more. I would take the last 3 days before we played the game. I would bring the projector and the film home, and I would go over it and over and over it, probably 2 or 3 hours a night for the last 3 nights before the game, and just to see if I could pick up any kind of weaknesses, any kind of tip-offs that they were showing, anything that would glaring. I think that we learn through repetition. I think we really learned through repetition. So I would repeat this over and over and over. So come game time, actually, felt really good. I felt confident. I kind of knew, it almost seemed like I was cheating. It always seemed like, Joe, you shouldn't be doing this. Like it's too obvious. Because I knew when that quarterback came up over the ball, I knew his tendencies. I knew if he looked right like 3 times, it's coming right. Like I just picked this stuff up, and it really helped. I kept doing it. So my point is, the more that you understand your business, all aspects of it, the more confident you're going to become as a person and as a leader in your company. The last thing you can do, I mean, it's nice to pray. I'm a Christian and I do pray, but I mean, it's nice to do that. But you're walking. I used to walk around with this sort of knot in my stomach all the time. But if you can reduce that knot by learning more about where you are and how your business is developing and where you're going and whatever, it certainly helped.
Well, actually, so to fast forward though, I think that attitude, and I want to bring other people into this conversation, but that attitude did two things. One, you got on the Calgary Stampeder all-time best, is it 100 players or 75 players?
Yeah, whatever.
75
Yeah.
players, right? All-time
Yep.
75. And
Yep.
you got voted into the Alberta Sports Hall of Fame, not just for football, but for business. So I think there's something to be said there about what you just shared. It takes you from being, stressed and having all that weight on your shoulders to provide for the family and not just provide for the family, but there's probably a lot, like I know you well enough to know there's probably a lot of stress to succeed, right? Not just provide for the family, but to actually succeed, right? I know I go through that. Like I'm one of the most competitive SOBs you'll ever meet. It's not just I want to provide, but I want to succeed. I want to do well. I want to win. A lot of pressure there. So yeah, good story. David, I see you making notes.
Yeah. Yeah, Joe said something that really hit me, and I started thinking about just all the different times where I've learned major lessons in my life. And for me, the way that I learn is by pain.
Yeah.
The
Yeah, no kidding.
pain of mistakes, the pain of regrets, the pain of shame.
Yeah.
That's where it
Shame, good
really
word.
it changes me, and it changes us. It's like when you start to feel that pain from whatever it is, it wakes you up and you're like, I hate this feeling. What's going on here, But Joe, I'm a Christian as well, and I was thinking about what you said, and it's one thing to pray, but you also have to take action.
Yeah.
You can pray all you want, and I pray all throughout every day. I lean very heavy on my faith, but if you just pray and then wait around for God to change your
Yeah.
situation, you might be waiting longer than you want to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What you have to do is pray, and I think look for some wisdom in whatever situation you're in, so that you can now take the next step forward in your life. And as men, we are competitive. We do want to win. We want our names to mean something. We want our lives to mean something. We want to have an impact with the people that we serve and with our families. But we can't do that if we're just aimlessly wandering around waiting for something great to happen, because
Yeah.
the world doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
That's just rare, you know?
That's
Yeah, good
great
point.
advice.
Right on, Dave.
You hit on a word there that a lot of people actually probably don't think about, and that's the word shame, right? You feel that shame. That's a really good
Man,
point.
I tell you guys, we're talking about mental health, so I'm just going to be honest. There was a time about, see, what was this, 6, 7 years ago. My amazing wife, Christina, will be married 20 years in August. We've
Congrats.
been together 24 years, but we've been through really hard times. We separated. We were using the word, we were throwing it around, the D word, and we separated for a couple years in, I want to
Wow.
say 2017, somewhere in there. And I went and got my own place, few a few minutes away from her place, and we had decided that we were just going to focus on taking care of our kids and loving on our two beautiful kids. We weren't going to trash talk each other, but we needed time to figure out life. And there were nights there, guys, where I was going to end it all. Like, life for me was ready. I was ready to be done with life. I don't want to be super graphic on this call, but I'll just tell you that I was really close to pulling the trigger many times.
You
Well,
had
And
the
what
plan.
advice would you give people that for whatever reason, and say we're talking business, but say their business is failing and they mentally they feel like that, where you felt you were? What advice would you give to people that are feel like they're at that point or close to that point or heading down that spiral?
well, there's probably a few things. I know for me, there was some bad habits there that needed to change. This has come up a few times already on this call. There's something needs to change, right? Because of the type of men that we are, when we're really, really struggling, oftentimes we look to relieve our stress with alcohol or with another addiction. For me, it's always been alcohol. So when things got really hard, I would drink, I drink a couple bottles of wine or whatever. And that's not the right way to handle that type of stress, because you just numb yourself, but you actually go further down the hole of depression. So you got to
Right.
look to see if, hey, do I have a bad habit that needs to be removed from my life? And for me, I could say, yeah, the drinking was something that made it actually harder to deal with, believe it or not. So there's that. And then look for help, find a buddy. I have some guys, and I used to have a rule where I would try to take a guy to lunch every week, a friend from church or a friend from work or from somewhere in the community. I would just take him to lunch, and I would always try to pray going into that meeting, God, help me to be useful to your kingdom and to be a positive influence for this man, wherever he is in his life. And sometimes we would get into deep stuff and sometimes we didn't. But it was a way for me to maybe shift off of focusing on myself and into trying to help somebody else. And amazingly, that kind of helped me. At the same time, it lifted me up. It encouraged me to try to help others. And then, I leaned a lot through my faith, and I just focused on trying to be the best version of me, and some nights you just don't do it. Some nights you screw up and you feel like a dirtbag the next morning, but like Joe said, you got to put your clothes on and go to work. And
That's right.
Yeah.
I mean, we're messed up. We're messed up creatures. We make mistakes, but you can't give up. You can never give up. You have to keep going, because there are too many people in all of our lives that are counting on us, and we would crush them if we made that choice, to give up. We would crush them because they count on us. They love us. They want to see us make it through, and they need us to make it through. So for that reason, we keep going. And I think it really helped me to just hone in on hey, I'm gonna keep going no matter how hard this gets. And fortunately, after about 2 years of being separated, we came back together, and our marriage was better than it was before. And we're still going strong now, and I don't think we'll have to go through that same type of a situation.
That's amazing.
Great,
Boy,
Dave. Well
yeah,
said.
that's really cool. You said some really neat things there, but one thing I want to circle back to is, well, two things. One, great point. We all have to realize more people than we think count on us. That's like, as you're saying that, you're making me realize, wow, that's such a powerful point. Yeah, really good.
It's more than just your family. It's your employees that are work underneath. It's your the people you buy from, suppliers. There's so many people involved, and somehow the ship that we're sailing, we're in charge of that. We got to make this thing go. You just can't. It's what it's like being dropped in the middle of the ocean. You can see land far, far away, and you start swimming, and you swim and you swim, and you wonder if you're getting anywhere. And then, you sort of tread water and you think, oh shit, what the hell's going, I can't. And then you end up, you got to keep swimming. You just got to keep pursuing that goal of whatever it might be, our own personal goals, which they're all different. Everybody's got a different goal. And everybody
No.
in business, I think the one thing that intrigued me about business, everybody has a different way of handling business. And your best buddy might look at something one way, and and that's interesting, and he can handle it. And you try to do it that way, and you can't handle it. It's not your body type. You look at somebody else. I mean, it's all a unique thing, and it's all sort of a survival thing. The higher you get, or the more that you expand, the deeper you're in, and the more that you have to grind it out. And I think there's one thing that I've always believed in. It's what we have control over and what we don't have control over. And we have to understand that. And a lot of times I have to keep reminding myself of that when I was in business. And the things that I had control over was, do I have the right staff? Did I hire the best people? Do I have the best products in my store? Do I have the right amount? Is my bank loan too hard? Am I expanding too quickly? All these things I have control over. I had to evaluate and keep on top of that. Things I don't have control over, like the economy. Now it's up and down like a yo-yo. We don't have control over weather. We don't have control over, there's a lot of outside sources, drought. Is that happening like in the business you're in, Richard? But you know what I mean? Like, so by discovering what you do have control over really can impact you if you know what areas are where your strengths are and where your weaknesses are. You're only as good as your worst staff. You're as good as your worst staff. You're as good as your worst product. That's it. So if you can raise them up, your whole company is kind of raised up. My opinion, this is what I used to think about all the time. Hey, let me tell you something. Let me just finish one thing. I just want to say something. I'm retired. It's the greatest thing in the world. I don't have a care in the world. The biggest decision I have to make is whether I want my eggs sunny side up or over easy. You know what I mean? Like it's great. So there is an end result here. There is an end game here. So just keep
If you
that in mind.
survive, if you
If
survive
you
it.
Survive.
if you survive, yeah.
Jets, to expand on what you just said a minute ago, because I think that's a good piece of advice for our listeners. What you have control over, that list you gave,
Yeah.
I guess, maybe a good piece of advice to expand on that for people would be make a list of what you have control over
Yeah.
and figure out with those things, how can you dial those in? But then the things you don't have control, and by the way, so another piece of advice, things you should have control over, if you don't know how to keep them under control, then go seek advice how to, go seek help, go seek advice, a perspective, an opinion on how you can do that properly. And then the things you don't have control over, you brought up, maybe people should, like business owners can learn to make a list of that. And if the things you don't have control over, figure out how you can get ahead of those things and do damage control before they happen, right? Like if it's here's just an example, going back to your sporting goods example. I remember back when we had the stores, because you just said it, we didn't have control. So again, focused on how you lower stress. We didn't have control over the weather. So I remember in one of the store chains, the one you and I had for a while, winter, like, is it going to snow and be cold, or is it not going to snow and be warm? So how do we get ahead of that? And we made a decision, let's stop carrying such weather sensitive winter snow footwear, and let's carry winter footwear that's fashionable and not so snow reliant. And that changed everything just in that department, which again increases sales, lowers stress. So again, just an example, but for anybody, a service, a product, whatever, are there things out of your control that actually maybe you could get them a little bit in your control by getting ahead of the situation?
Good one, Greg.
Yeah.
What I liked is talking about controls. You can control what you input, and I think that's part of what Joe was trying to say. If something's not working for you, then you got to change your input to get a different output.
That's
You
right.
know, and
Yeah, sure.
that you have control over. You got control over what type of work that it is that you do. And sometimes maybe it's just showing up as the best version of you when you show up to work. Trying to work on that controlling being a good human being that
Good attitude.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, you can totally
Yeah.
control that.
Yep.
David, sorry, I got to go back to something you said earlier too, because I meant to bring it up and then I forgot. The suggestion you gave a few minutes ago about trying to make an effort once a week, or even if it's once a month, but once a week to reach out, have lunch with somebody, have a coffee, whatever it is, right? And just be there for each other, because and it probably helped you and it probably helped them, right? And I love you just said you went into that lunch with the attitude of, hopefully I can be of help today. Like just, whether it's just an ear to listen or whatever, that's an awesome piece of advice for anybody, whether you're feeling stressed or not. Because if you're not feeling stressed, you can be there for somebody else so that the day you do become stressed, maybe they'll come back and help you out. That was a really good piece of advice, actually.
Yeah, men should be able to do hard things, but they, as you guys are fully aware, they need to be able to offload this stress. And I'm kind of an old-fashioned guy. I'm the guy that I'm not going to go home and talk about the stress of my workday to my wife. I don't think that's fair to
Yeah.
her to say, "Hey, I'm so stressed out. I think I want to die. The business is going to go under if we don't hit this number. My staff sucks and this and that and this and that." Man, what would that do to my poor wife if I had to go home every night and offload this stress onto her? That's just not fair. So, and you guys are probably the same. Like I keep that in. I pack it on my
Yeah.
backpack, so to speak, and I carry it with me everywhere I go. The only people that
Yeah.
are going to understand this are other men that are also trying to do hard stuff. And
Yeah.
somewhere in those conversations, if you're leveling with each other and being honest with each other, you're going to be able to connect and recognize where you could help. So it's always been a really neat, powerful thing in my life. I've been doing it for a while now, and I've created some really, really wonderful relationships with guys that are also doing hard stuff. guys that are stressed, guys that have thought about committing suicide or have thought about giving up and walking away from their wives or their family or whatever. And I'd like to think that as much as it's helped me, it's also helped some of them.
I love
Yeah.
it. That's a good point.
And you know, Rich, when times are tough, you can't just, like you said, you can't bring it home. It's really hard to bring it home. But you can't go complain to your staff either. You know, you don't want to depress them. You know, you got to be positive around them. It's almost like you got to be phony. And but I remember when things weren't going good, or I'm sitting there with a store full of winter inventory, and it's like 80 degrees outside, you know, and I've got ski jackets that are gonna keep you warm and 80 below zero, you know. And so you know, I would go around and talk to the accountant, and ask him, you know, how are payables coming? Oh, good, good. You know, and I'm trying to search things that are positive. So I try to buyers. I used to talk to them. Are all your inventory in? Are you careful of what? Have you talked to so and so about all our discounts? Yeah. Have you? So I would reinforce the positive from them, and that would help settle me down. But I would never complain to them about how bad it is. I would always, you know, be positive, but try to find a positive thing they're doing that would make me feel better and more self assured that things are okay. You know. Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
good one.
you don't have to be phony if you believe it all works out in the end.
Yeah.
So you
Well,
just got to remind yourself it's all going to work out no matter what happens here.
I agree.
What's the real end goal for all of us? I mean, we just want to be happy, right? It doesn't matter how many zeros are in the bank account. It doesn't matter how many cars are in the driveway, how many square feet you have. None of that matters. We are all seeking happiness. That's
Yeah.
what we're after. And
Yeah.
so, you know, sometimes we get too focused on the material things and too focused on our status and our position, but we need to refocus ourselves on, hey, I just want to be happy. So everything else, screw it. Doesn't matter. It's just noise. You know, all this
Yeah,
bad
well
stuff
said.
around me doesn't matter.
Hey, Richard, at any point, I say this unknowing, I know Dennis knows your business better than I do, but at any point were you like, was the business super stressed out, and then were you able to realize what was stressing you out in your business as a business owner, realize what was stressing you out, and then what did you do to start to alleviate that? I guess, how'd you recognize it, and then how'd you alleviate it? Have you been in a situation like that at all?
Yeah, it seems like I'm on that now. It seems like it's 99% of it above my shoulders is where it all starts. It's so much on my hard drive. I've been and now I'm taking a I'm taking a brain retraining course, and it just, you know, so it's like you feed something garbage for so long, what's going to come out, right? Is garbage. Is and and you know, and David was talking about that, just the mental part. It's like, yeah, I've been there, and it's when a person when a person starts to go down that way, opens an unknown door that that allows just so many different ugly and negative
Yeah.
thoughts
Yeah.
and spirits, and it's like
For sure.
you don't even know I don't even know that. So yeah, it starts with a thought pattern, and somebody mentioned here too, just a part of just getting out and doing something. And it's like I have a little saying on my notebook, my journal I carry around about everywhere. It's like, just, you know, show up, do the work, and then and see what happens. And when I was in the when I was in the thick of it, and I wouldn't wish this on anybody, but I could hardly get out of the house. It was
Yeah.
like, you know, I was like, what am I doing? And it just started piling up. It's like,
Yeah, I
then
know.
that doesn't help. So it's harder than it sounds. Just, okay, go and find somebody to talk with. Well, I start looking around. It's like everybody's got it better than me, right? When a guy's down that low, it's like, who are you gonna find to to just go talk to? So where's, you know, that part, it would be nice to. I'd like to hear some of that too. You know, how do you encourage somebody? Just go and find somebody, and for all you know, the guy that's looks successful, he's been through that
Or
just as
still
bad
going
or
through it
worse, right?
now.
Or yeah, yeah.
I think that's
Yeah, boy, that's a really good. Sorry, Dennis, you
Yeah.
can add to this, but the world doesn't realize 80% of businesses are failing. Like people just don't realize that. They don't know. And that's a crazy statistic. So, Richard, back to what you just said, like that feeling of, wow, I'm failing or it's not working or the money's not there. It's this feeling of I'm on an island, I'm alone. It's just happening to me. And it's just not the case. 8 out of 10 business owners, it's happening to them. So to your point, encourage people to go out and talk to others. Even if you think from the outside looking in, things are great, 8 out of 10 are not. That's the truth. So, yeah, I think that's a great point you bring up is don't be afraid to go talk to others. And if you bump into somebody that's a good human being and you open up about it, they'll talk to you about it. They'll share. They'll, maybe they're experiencing it too, or maybe they did experience it and figured out a way out. But yeah, that's a really good point. Like taking the initiative to go find somebody. I love it. Dennis, you probably got a lot to say on that too.
I think it's tough, man. Like it's from Mike's like I've had come from a background of depression. I've had it most of my life, probably since about puberty, and I've had to find different ways to deal with it. But the challenge, like people will say, well, our industry is different. Greg and I have it easy because of blah blah blah. We educate and we teach, but the business is still the business. The obstacles there are still the obstacles there. And I think there's two practices I've figured out. Number one is it is incredibly hard to talk to my friends who have jobs about what it's like to go fight tigers. I don't think
Yeah.
most people know what it's like to fight a tiger. And then you go
Yeah.
out there and you fought a couple of them and you've been and you've got the scars for it and somebody looks at you and they think that you're crazy. Why would you do it to yourself? So how do you talk to those people about what that's like? Then the second thing I've had to do in my life is develop an attitude of neutral thinking. So when something happens, I've had to go back and say, what are the actual facts about what happened, not what I felt about what happened, because the majority of the time my depression got really bad was all about self-loathing and whatever and reading something into a story that just wasn't true. I would remove
Good
the
point.
facts and say,
Yeah,
well,
that's true.
these aren't the facts. The facts are I can't do it. I'm useless. Everybody else has got it figured out. I'm a coward. I can't believe I don't have this. I've let down my family. I've betrayed everybody, all of that stuff. And then you go back and you analyze the facts, and the facts specifically say that, well, the sales call didn't go well. And everything else that came after that was all of the emotional baggage I put on myself. So
Yeah. Yeah,
for me,
that's
it's
true.
one, I'm
When
careful.
actually, that's a really good point. When the fact is, it's just simply the sales call didn't go well.
It's all that
Like, and
happened,
that's where it
Yeah.
stops, right? Then what do you do to fix it versus all, yeah, that's a great advice. Great
right?
advice.
And you run down that negative pathway. And so I try to try to talk to the people who are emotionally neutral about the situation, not my overly emotional friends whose answer is, well, go get a job. Because they don't understand. It's not about getting a job. I wouldn't be here if I wanted the job. I'm doing this because it pushes me. And then I've encountered a brand new problem in my life, which is going back to David's comment about I just want to be happy. The fortunate part is when I get comfortable and I get happy, I find something to stress myself out. I find I have to
Yeah.
live at a certain level of positive stress or pressure to keep myself moving forward. Otherwise, I get very cranky, upset, and purposelessness, if that makes sense. Now that I've fought in tigers, now that I know I can survive them, I'm kind of trying to find the next one that I can go fight, even though I know it's going to hurt and it's going to suck. I feel somehow better.
As long as it's not too big.
Well, not at once. I mean, the very first tiger I thought I ever fought
Yeah.
turned out to be a house cat. It wasn't that deadly at all.
Looking
But it was
back,
a
you
stuffed
mean?
cat.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, yeah.
But you think it's everything, and then I've
Yeah.
just
Dennis, you made me think about something that I think we all need to recognize is how much power our words have, and
oh for
especially the
sure.
words that we speak to ourselves. You know, if you're
Yeah.
only
Yeah,
speaking to
it's true.
yourself, oh man, I'm a failure, I'm an idiot, I'm this, I'm that, and you almost manifest your own bad situation, but on the flip side, you could do the opposite and speak life and speak truth and speak power into your life and then try walking through those shoes and see what happens. Those are two different men that go down two incredibly different paths. The man that speaks the negative words and the man that speaks the positive words, most of the time, they're two different men altogether and they have two different outcomes.
Probably, to your point, probably they attract a different support group, right?
Yeah, negative people
those
attract
two.
negative people. Back to your point, David, somebody said to me one time, if you ever stop to think about what you say to yourself, is that's the same thing you would say to your child.
Yeah, wow, boom,
Would
like
you
snap.
use
That's
the
a
words you
good
say to
one.
yourself? Would you ever say those words to your child? And I went, no.
Why? Because you don't want to hurt your child, right? Because you love them. So why do we hurt ourselves? Why do we not love
Yeah,
ourselves that way?
boom.
Right?
That's been a big part of my journey too, and realizing that that's almost 100% of the battle is just keeping that positive, even if I'm saying something that maybe isn't quite true, but if it's positive, it's eventually going to get there. Even if I don't feel awesome, I'm feeling really down, I'll tell myself, you're doing great, you're doing awesome. It, I'm realizing that it doesn't change it right now, but down the road, it's going to do something. It
I'll let
has
you
to.
in on a little secret, like this special trick I heard about. I'm probably gonna botch the story, but someone told me about Special Olympics, and like, you ever notice when they cross the finish line, regardless of what disability they have, they would lift up their hands in victory, whether they're blind or deaf or, whatever, lift up their hands in victory. Well, why would a blind person do that? Why would they lift up their hands? I think it was a TED talk or something. And so they said, well, what it does is when you do that for a certain amount of time, it releases chemicals in your mind. I don't know if it's dopamine or whatever. And I remember hearing this right before a really, really stressful call that I had to be on with, yeah, I was working with AT&T at the time and had this high pressure call I was about to do. And I was freaking out. I was dying inside. I was so scared and nervous, and I didn't want to screw up. It was a big deal to me, and I had to excuse myself right before the call from my
And
team.
do it.
And I went into the men's bathroom, and I'm just going like this, just like, is it gonna work? Is it gonna work? And I'm just holding my hands up in the bathroom. And after about a minute or two, I'm like, okay, here we go. Whew. Get in there, and I'm like, all right, let's do it. And I got through it. So I don't know if it works or not, but next time you guys are freaking out, go hide in a secret room and lift your arms up in victory.
Cool. Good tip. That's awesome. I can see that working.
I just wanted to
Yeah,
share one final thing, if
yeah,
that's okay.
yeah.
I wanted to say about the situation that everybody's in, or when I was sorry, I'll go back to when I was in business. Be careful of where you sit. We've mentioned this before about your own personal welfare and goals, personal. In other words, my dad used to say, I was raised as an Italian. My dad was an Italian immigrant, and he taught everything himself, very independent, bought a service station, had it for 40 years, and he had a grade 5 education, and he very successful in life, worked his ass off. And my point is, he used to say, Joe, save your money, save your money, save your money. And what I'm trying to make a point of, which I think helped me along the way, is that I always saved money. I put retirement plans, I always put some away and let that grow and grow and grow. And I had good financial backers that sort of controlled that was really helped me mentally. Another thing is, I always lived within my means. I didn't want my own personal mortgage to now integrate all the stress I had at work. Like, why would I do that? Why would I get a $5 million, I'm just throwing this out, a $5 million mortgage on my own house if I'm running a business and trying to maintain, then I got too many stresses. So I always lived underneath, like from a mortgage or the car that I drive or the money that I spent every month or whatever. I always had that under tie so that wouldn't interfere with a lot of the stresses I had at work. And I think we got to be careful of that. There's so many people I know that are under stress, and yet, they have these big car loans. Like, I mean, it's unreal. Or these this and that it's just overwhelming. And I'm just trying to say that to maintain a personal sort of budgetary thing and savings plan that should everything go to hell, that at least you're going to have, you're still floating in life, you know? That's all I want to say.
Yeah, it's good advice. I want to come back to, before we close, I want to come back to two things from earlier. Dad, the very beginning, you started by saying, hey, we chose to be a business owner, like whoever's a business owner. And with that, if I could expand on that, it comes, not everybody is, we'll say, cut out to be a leader or wants to be a leader, because there's a lot of responsibility with that, right? You're leading people, like a team of people, whatever it is, if you own a business. So, and that brings a lot of stress. So if you're a business owner out there and you choose to be a business owner, you choose to be a leader. And if you're choosing that, it comes with responsibility. And that's why I think a lot of men feel that stress on themselves because of that. And I think everybody's kind of hit on it a bit, but one thing you can do is stick your head in the sand and run from it. Or another thing you can do, and I think just what everybody gave this advice in one way or another, is do something about it. Like, do something about it, figure out how to succeed, how to fix it, how to make it better, make the problem go away. And then the other thing I wanted to hit on is, boy, David said something earlier about quitting is harmful. That was a pretty powerful point. If you think about, if you quit, if you're a leader, a business owner, and you quit, what's the ripple effect? Because you got family ripple effect, you got your staff ripple effect, your customers ripple effect. I mean, if you do a better job at your product or service than everybody else, then your customers pay the price if you quit. So, a good answer if you're a business owner and you're stressed is figure out how to fix the business. Fix it. Get up, go to work, do the thing, figure it out.
Thanks for listening to the More Profit, Less Stress podcast. If you liked what you heard, be sure to subscribe or follow on your favorite podcast platform and leave a comment or review if you're feeling generous. To learn more about us and what we do, check out our website. Until next time, take care.